galaxy far, far away. And a bookshelf straight out of the 90s. From Thrawn to Dantooine and everything in between. This is Legends Look Back.
Hello everybody and welcome to Legends Look Back, a show brought to you by Utini.com, a show that's been described as the favorite Star Wars podcast of the Squirtle Squad, where we talk about all things Star Wars Legends, celebrating our rich EU history as well as diving into lesser-known Star Wars classics, except for not this week, because we're talking about like the most notorious Legends book there ever was in the history of all Legends, not just Star Wars Legends, but just like Legends in general. All right, I'm your host, Jared Mays. Today I'm joined once again from the Mustafar that is Southern California. 95 degrees, everybody, in his podcasting studio tonight. Freddie C. Other than the heat, how's it going, Freddie?
Not too bad. I'm so glad we're here to talk about Ruins of Dantooine. I'm pretty excited that
Wait, what?
We're
Did I
finally
get the wrong book off the shelf? All right, episode's over. See you guys.
Yeah, it's really hot here. I'm losing it, as you can tell. Heat wave in California, and of course, you know, we are lucky to not have AC here most of the year, except for today. So that's where I'm at.
Well, at least when you're recording a podcast, you don't have to worry about like the air conditioner being too noisy. But
No.
we would take the noise tonight. We would gladly take it. I told Freddie before the show, he was like, I might have to duck out for a minute because of the heat. If I get overheated, I was like, Freddie, grab an ice pack and let's do the show. All right, let's just do the show. But as usual, you got me and Freddie, and once again, 2 weeks in a row with our new model where we're doing these two-part roundtables. Glad to have him back in the studio with us, and what a beautiful studio it is. We've got the Grand Admiral of Star Wars YouTube himself, Jake Ruddle. How's that one? Last week it was Mr. YouTube. You've been promoted 2 ranks all the way up
Professor
to Grand.
YouTube.
I know, moving up. I know. I haven't even put a YouTube video out since the last one yet, so I like this promotions, and it's not even having to do very much. So it's we got some things coming though. It's we've Emma's been releasing some videos, and Nathan's been releasing some videos, and we got some timeline videos that are going to be coming up here soon. That we've kind of got in the docket that I've been recording with and editing.
All right.
So hopefully you'll see my face back on the
tubes.
It's not the big screen.
On the tubes,
small
man.
Screen,
On the
tube
tubes.
Screen. Yeah, on the
That's
tubes.
right.
You know, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. I've been watching, keeping up with it recently, and I like what you guys are doing, and I commend you guys for doing it. So
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's. I mean, it's been fun, and that's what. I mean, I think when we first started doing it and talking about it all back in May, I think was whenever I stepped in. You know, we spent so much time, like the hosts together. You know, Nathan and Emma. I was doing some videos. Now Matt's jumping in with things. I mean, our whole group spent a lot of time, like, kind of building it with each other and kind of just playing around with each other before we actually put anything on YouTube. So I think that's kind of what makes it nice now, is because, you know, we're all partners in on it, you know, the way that you guys have your partner stuff. And, you know, we've learned that, you know, it's a full-time job to be a YouTube star, even while we also have full-time jobs outside of that.
Can somebody please make a quote of that where Jake put his picture looking really stupid whenever he's making like a really bad point and has like a really weird face going on, because you just freeze frame it on the worst possible Jake moment, and then just like maybe we can get One IO in the chat who does calligraphy, amazing calligraphy on Instagram. Can you just like letter for us, you know, in your beautiful handwriting, that amazing quote by Jake? If you want to be a YouTube star, what was it? I've already forgotten the rest of the quote.
I've already forgotten it too.
If you want to be a YouTube star, just be like Jake Ruddle. There we go.
But what I'm getting at there though is that we've got. It's nice because it's a team effort, and you know I've been able to do some videos, but you know I'm glad that Emma's there. I'm glad Nathan's there. I'm glad Matt's doing his stuff because it takes a little bit of the pressure off. You know, it's been a blast and everything, and I wish I could just do it all day long, but you know, the real world jumps in.
Yeah, you got to
I'd
teach.
much rather spend my time in a galaxy.
You got to teach
far,
America's
far away.
future.
Oh yeah,
All the good that's gonna
imagine
do.
Trying to teach the future. We had to have a lesson on civil discourse after the debate.
We got to make it out of 2020 if teaching the future even matters. We'll say that much. But for tonight, we're going to put all those cares away. We are going to dive deep into this that amazing Legends book, Heir to the Empire, straight out of 1991. We'll say that this is a huge day for us as Star Wars fans, huge day for Utini, because right after this, I mean, who knows, maybe we can just keep this podcast going. We can roll the tape right up until midnight Eastern, that is, not for you, Freddie. When we've got our stream happening right here on this channel. This is like, it's like we're the opening. The opener, right? We're opening for Squadrons gameplay that's going to be happening right here on twitch.com/Utini_US. This has got to go in the game where, ring a bell every time Jared botches the Twitch description. But for tonight with this show, you can catch us every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, because we represent both coasts like that. You can, of course, subscribe to the channel, show your support of the show with Twitch Prime, grab those credits from Amazon, and help us conquer the galaxy. Of course, now we're doing this new format with 2-part roundtables, because one part just isn't going to cut it with books like Heir to the Empire, of course. We'll continue to post the audio each and every week in your podcast feeds. We've got our all-new podcast feed that you can like, subscribe, share, leave us a nice review, all that good stuff. And, of course, thank you to our patrons who have helped get us here. Incredibly excited to be doing this live on Twitch, even with all of its technical difficulties that we've had. We're so pumped to be doing it this way. It's so much more fun to have you folks with us in the chat. I will say, last week we did our introduction to Heir to the Empire. We talked about all that fun behind-the-scenes stuff. We talked about the Brazilian covers, the original covers, the alternate arts. This week we're going to be diving into the overarching questions that we have. Last week we talked about the characters. We talked about Thrawn. We talked about Mara Jade. We talked about Captain Pelion. This week, Jake, what are you worshiping? Your epic? What are you, bowing down to it over there? Lying prostrate on the ground?
Now I was trying to show the picture of Thrawn there, but then
the camera's so far away. Yeah,
setup of everything. Yeah, it just didn't. I had an idea in my mind.
This is what we call Legends Calisthenics with Jake Ruddle. Little did you know that you were actually the gym teacher.
The book.
Not just the English teacher. There you go. Move it over. Of course, we're talking about the.
Now take 2 books.
Yeah, Joxy's gonna make a gif of that one for sure. For sure, you've just been gifted, Jake.
That's my goal this evening.
Or if you were in the Zahn book, it would be G''IF. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's like that's his Chiss name. Yeah. We'll say this much: this book came straight out of 1991. It was the first major Star Wars book to reignite the franchise, and something we omitted from last week's show that absolutely needs to go down on record is the fact that this book. I'm gonna actually let you guys guess about this. Freddie, I'm put you on the spot here. All right, we like to do some fun games at the start of Legends Look Back. What place in the New York Times bestsellers list do you think Heir to the Empire peaked at? How high do you think it got on the list? In recent Star Wars memory, the newest Zahn book, the newest Thrawn book, Chaos Rising hit number 9, I believe, which was pretty good. We were happy with that. There was some hullabaloo on the internet, on the tubes. How about you, Freddie? What do you think? How high did Heir to the Empire get? Everybody, put your guesses in the chat. Put a number.
This is a good one, because I don't really read the New York Times bestsellers and stuff like that, and I don't really pay attention.
I would call this my number one interest in all of Star Wars, is how high the books have ranked historically. I almost said hysterically. Historically, how high they've ranked on the New York Times bestsellers list. So the opposite of me is Freddie. He doesn't care.
Yeah,
but he's gonna guess anyway.
I just like reading the books, man. Let's see. I'm gonna say, I don't know why it speaks to me, but number 5.
Number 5. Okay, you got to guess. Jake, higher, lower? Price is right. Him. Go with 4 and just beat him out.
Well, I was gonna say 2. I feel like if it was 1, it would have Oh wait, it says on the top number 1 New York Times bestseller. So.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, I guess all 3 of them were. New York
it says
Times.
It right here on the cover.
Yeah, so I kind of cheated, but I was gonna be like, number 2, because it doesn't say that on the cover, and then I look at the cover and it literally says the number 1 New York. So is that the
it's
answer,
number 1. It was number 1. The number 1 book in the world.
That was a great example of setting your expectations a little low, and you're just like, oh man, number 1, that's
manage
really good.
Expectations. Oh my gosh, manage those expectations. What a great moment. All right, you want to guess how many Star Wars books have ever debuted at number 1 on the New York Times bestsellers list?
So we're sticking to debuts, not.
Oh, come on, I don't know, Jake. I just chose the word. I mean, just say like ever reached number 1.
I'm never gonna be asked to do this
All right.
again.
How many
Let's
do you
just-
think? Or at least
I'm
like
gonna-
try to guess what one other might be. Wes says Wes
Well, since
Wes
5
guesses
is speaking
6.
to Freddie.
You're gonna say 5? 5 ever?
Okay. Well, that was speaking to Freddie, and Freddie was speaking to me, so I'll say 5.
Freddie Spready. And
There you
that's not going to be his new
Freddy.
nickname at all.
make that a shirt, guys.
Oh, please don't. No, Joxy. Get out of here, Joxy. No, don't do it.
Spready some Freddie on
Spaghetti.
your
On your spaghetti.
Thursday nights.
All right, this is getting out of hand. No, this is getting out of hand.
Okay, yeah, it is.
Whew,
I mean,
I'm getting sweaty. I don't know about y'all. How about you, Freddie?
Been there.
Sweaty Freddy.
I'm still
All right.
sweating.
All right, there
Sweaty-
are officially
Freddie.
out of. And thank you, Andrew, for that bit to celebrate Freddy Spaghetti. We're not going to say that other one ever again. Ever. Not going to happen. Freddie, did you take your guess? Jake's guess is 5.
I mean, I was gonna go with 5 as well, but let's go with 10.
All right, splitting the difference. The correct answer is 7
Ooh,
/
not
kind
bad.
of 8, because there was one Legacy of the Force book that in its paperback release reached number 1 on the paperbacks bestsellers list. But I'm counting it. So the correct answer in all of its entirety is 8. The books are this: Heir to the Empire, The Force Unleashed, The Force Awakens, Thrawn Alliances, Legacy of the Force something. I never did write it down, so apparently my number's wrong. We're going to have to do a little bit more Googling. Anyway, the answer is either 7 or 8. I think it's Legacy of the Force Revelation, and I just got off on a line here and miscounted. Anyway, and then also most recently Ahsoka as the YA book. It was number 1, the number 1 YA book.
Okay.
And so there we go. There's some Legends trivia for you as we get started. Last week, we, of course, did the summary of the book. We're not going to be recapping the entire thing all over again. You're more than welcome to access the Twitch stream, the YouTube video, or in your podcast player, you can go in and listen to that if you would like. But we will warn you, if you have not read Heir to the Empire, the Legends Classic, please go do so. It's excellent. Send me a message in Discord, and I'll send you the audiobook one way or another. I'll drive it to your house if I have to. You're gonna love this book. Except for those of you who are overseas. Not driving overseas. Until we get our X-Wings. Yeah, we'll get there one day. But I will say, as we get started with talking about the overarching questions, there's one thing we've got to talk about first, and that is today is the last day that you can use our discount code on Teespring to get your very own Thrawn-inspired Disney, if you're listening, Thrawn inspired, but in no way exactly a Thrawn shirt. It's just like inspired us in some way. Shirt made by our incredible creator, Joxy. I'm going to pull it up any minute here. As soon as I find it, it's amazing. Guys, have you ordered your...
Cool, man.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? This is our, what are we calling it? Red Eye in the Blue Void of Space. It's got a name that's really something cool like that. I gotta say, I just got paid a couple days ago. This is probably gonna have to happen. So you can go to utini.com, click on community, click on merch, and you can get your own in men's or women's versions. Whatever that means. You can get your own, no matter your size, and rep
Or
your
style.
support of, or style. And of course, we've got our own Legends Look Back shirts. We'll talk about that in a little while. But first, guys, let's get into the meat of it. Last week, we talked about the characters. We talked about Mara Jade and whether or not Luke really did ruin her life. We talked about how she has cast an incredible legacy within EU characters. We talked about her first impression on the EU. We talked about the great smuggler himself, Talon Card. We talked about our original trilogy characters, Luke, Leia, and then the original characters that Thrawn creates, and boy, does he do a great job. We talked about Captain Pelion, Jeruus Sabayoth, which I never get tired of saying. I just want a ringtone of myself saying Jeruus Sabayoth. Is that conceited? Is that narcissistic? Let's put it this way. I would like to have a ringtone of Mark Thompson saying Jeruus Sabayoth, because it's just music to my ears.
Captain Pelion.
That's not bad, Jay. All right, I'm going to close my eyes. Say it again.
Captain Pelican.
No, not as good. It was better with the eyes open. All right, I'll say this.
You put me on the spot.
Wait, what was that,
You
Freddie?
can't
What
do
was that?
to me.
I loved it.
Error.
Yeah, if you guys weren't here last week, we ended out the episode with what was the greatest clip in the history of Star Wars audiobooks. And I should know, I'm writing the Utini Guide to Star Wars audiobooks, and it's going in there for sure. Did you hear that, Meg? It's going in the guide. All right.
It should be in there.
It's got to go in. It was amazing, but you know what else is amazing? Everything else we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about the overarching questions, that is, issues relating to plot, issues relating to this book's impact on the larger expanded universe as a whole, and all of that good stuff. We're going to start off, of course, with something that happens very early in the book, and that's a really sweet, perfect, heartwarming... I mean, I'm about to shed a tear just thinking about it. This heartwarming conversation that happens between Luke and the ghost of old Ben Kenobi. You guys remember this scene? It's early on in the book. Old Ben is trying to peace out, and, Zahn gives his own... his own explanation of why that had to happen. We'll talk about that in a minute. Why it doesn't really work for the story to have old Ben popping up, solving Luke's problems all the time. Luke's got to take, his step into Jedi masterhood without his teacher Ghost looking over his shoulder all the time, which really has creepy implications if you think about it. But please don't. And so early in the book, he's having this conversation with old Ben. Luke, like a wise guy who knew the title to Episode 7... botched it. Luke, like a wise guy who knew the title to Episode 8, way back in 91, he whinily says to Ben, or at least Mark Thompson says it whinily, but I liked it. He says that he's lonely, and he's the last Jedi. It's almost like he looks into the camera when he says it. I'm the last Jedi. Wink, wink, nod, nod, and I'm gonna hate it. Anyway, Ben says, however, you're not the last of the old Jedi, Luke. All right, can you do this in your best Mark Thompson Ben Kenobi impression, Jake? You got a Ben Kenobi? Not the last of the old Jedi, Luke. I mean, I think this is my favorite Legends quote ever, or at least one of them.
Not the last of the Jedi, Luke. The last of the old Jedi. Not the... I don't know. I can't. It's hard.
You're doing horribly.
The first of the new.
Yeah, not
I
the
just
last
imagine
of the...
like Ewan McGregor. Not the
Hello
last,
there.
I don't know. I just
Hello there.
I just like doing Captain Pelican with the Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's being mean to me.
Yeah, the rest of this episode is just going to be us saying hello there.
Yeah.
Not the last of the...
I'm not good at
Here's the
that.
quote, not the last of the old Jedi, Luke, but the first of the new. What an incredible Legends quote. If ever I needed to have a Legends poster with a quote on it. I do also like the quote from Rogue Squadron that begins the very first line of the book that says, you're good, kid. You're good, Corrin, but you're no Luke Skywalker. So I like that quote, too, because
that's a good
Corrin,
one.
it's like the book starts off by acknowledging that Corrin is terrible. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But, with this quote, it really does have a lot of significance, doesn't it? How does this help Luke reframe and to get him set on the path that's eventually going to lead him into what becomes the entirety of the post-Return of the Jedi Legends timeline, Freddie? How does this set Luke off on this course that's basically defined Star Wars for 20, 30 years?
Yeah. I was wondering when I was a kid, why did he have to go? Because I feel it almost like Ben abandoned him, right? But this pushed Luke to realize that he had to do his thing, right? There was no one else. He was the alpha of the Jedi, not as in he was the most powerful, but he was the beginning, right? He's the start again, because there was a purge. It didn't exist. It didn't exist anymore, and only a couple existed to kind of push the Jedi philosophy along, right? Only a few were around, and of course that changes depending on Legends and canon, right? But it essentially just got Luke to realize that he had to move forward. He had to move forward, and he had to look after the Jedi philosophy. He had to foster it into new people.
Yeah, that's good. And he really doesn't do a lot in this particular book. Zahn doesn't, in terms of establishing new Jedi. There's a character introduced who eventually does become a Jedi. We won't spoil too much about that. Most people probably already know, but just in case you haven't, we'll try to keep it contained to this book. it's obviously KJA and all of his Legends infamy, who introduces a whole new swath of Jedi in the Jedi Academy trilogy. Can't wait for us to talk about that. Nathan's going to join us for that before too long, before the year is over, before 2020 comes to its apocalyptic end. We're going to talk about the Jedi Academy trilogy, which can be a lot of fun. But this does really define Legends. And I've always said this is the biggest difference between post-Return of the Jedi canon and Legends, and that's Luke is successful with his Jedi Academy. That's not to say he's perfect. He makes a lot of mistakes along the way. You've got lots of galactic conflicts that happen. You got the Centerpoint Station, Thraken Sal Solo. You got the Black Fleet crisis. You got the Shadow Academy, the Yuuzhan Vong, the Darth Kaitis. You got Abeloth. There's a lot of problems that happen, okay? But didn't even talk about the Kaliks, the bug people. I mean, that's crazy. So there's a lot of problems, but Luke is successful. He's got a happy family of over 100 Jedi Knights who call him Crazy Uncle Luke. I mean, Grandmaster Luke. What's your opinion on this, Jake? How well do you think this quote and this conversation establishes the book as well as all of Legends into the future?
Yeah. Well, I think, what a lot of people, I think for so much this was the Last Jedi, like Johnson's Last Jedi, let the past die, kill it if you have to moment. And I think a lot of people, that Last Jedi. But I think a lot of people were kind of upset with that idea, but it wasn't really the first time that had been done. And I think kind of to build off what Freddie said, it was really kind of necessary to do that, because for Luke to take the step forward and to be his own person, he had to let the past die. I mean, the kill it if you have to, that's a little aggressive, but I think that was a Kylo Ren characterization thing. But to let the past die, to set up, you weren't ever going to be able to set up something new, this new world, these new characters, this new Jedi Academy, this new Leia. You weren't ever going to be able to do that if you always constantly had the shadow of Ben Kenobi and Yoda and Darth Vader. You had to step out of that, and there had to be a moment. So I think it was really kind of, brave may not be, or courageous may not be the right word for it, but for Zahn to say, okay, I'm just going to do this and do it in the second chapter.
Yeah, I mean, it is bold, at the very least, to say something that was a staple. And the Ghost of Ben Kenobi is in all 3 original trilogy films. Obviously, you don't see the blue glowy, I don't think, in A New Hope, but you certainly hear him in the cockpit, which is an iconic moment as Freddy gets his Boba Fett Halloween bucket out. We gotta talk about that before the show's over. What an amazing prop you got, Freddy. The candy. What was it you said before the show? The candy's no good to me dead.
that was Jake. That was good.
Oh,
that candy's no good to me.
Yeah,
dead.
and I was saying it's no good to me if we're all dead because 2020 and all that.
The Empire will compensate you
with Reese's. All right.
Yeah, with Reese's.
And we are, of course, now in the month of October. If you're listening to this episode later, and before we get too off track, you want to chime in on this one, Freddie? Why was this such a bold move on Zahn's part to, in the second chapter, axe the Ghost of Ben Kenobi and remove him from the story? Was it necessary for Legends to happen?
Oof. Yeah, this is a good one because it's a bold choice, right? This is extremely bold to get rid of such a critical character. But I think in my opinion, it had to happen. And it had to happen because Jake put it very plainly, right? In order for Luke to grow, he needed to basically sever the thing that Luke was leeching onto, right? Because if you think about it, imagine finding out like, hey, by the way, you're a super powerful being, and there's only 2 of us in this entire universe because this guy killed them all. And by the way, we're dying now, and it's all up to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that's a tough thing, and I hate keep making references back to the new canon.
No, you can,
because that's
you can't in the first episode, but you can in part 2.
we hit so much of that, and I that's where I think I get frustrated with a lot of the criticism on some of these characters in the new canon, is because those concepts. And I don't know, maybe it's because we had new characters that we were seeing with in the new canon, and it was different when we're dealing with our Luke and our Leia and our Han. But I don't know, just that general concept of the perfect word was sever, to cut that and say, okay, now I've got to move on. But that's a character development on so many different levels. It's a kid growing up from their parents, and ours. I mean, everybody can think back to that moment that they've got where, they've had to cut something off and move on without it, and that's really the only way that they can move forward and be successful. It sucks, it hurts,
right?
But
it's in the Bible. Forget
Yeah.
what lies behind and press on toward what lies ahead. There we go. Got to have a Bible reference in every episode.
Don't look back. I mean,
It's
and then
in-
it goes
it's in
back
the
to
bylines.
episode 1. Don't look back. Don't look back.
Your focus determines your reality.
Yes.
There we go.
So I think, I don't know, just necessary, and I think it worked
And
out. It was done well.
Luke was focused there in the beginning. In chapter 2, you're right, it's on page 14 where this quote comes up, in case you're thinking about getting this tattooed on your body, because I sure am. In Arabic, of course. My wife was like, is there really a language in Star Wars, and can you speak it fluently? And I was like, yes and no. No, I haven't
We can all
dedicated
speak basic.
hours to learning Arabic. I don't know. What kind of crazy person would do that? Yeah, I have, honestly. It was to prepare for my trip to Galaxy's Edge, because there were signs, and I was like, hey, this says there's a Dianoga in this water fountain, look! And nobody was around to listen to me. It was
So
awesome.
funny.
It's in
would-
chapter 2 in this book, page 14, where this happens, and Luke's focus is on being lonely. Because you look at Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, and he's really... he's brooding. He's obviously accomplished something, but he's hurt. I mean, he's deeply messed up. The Last Jedi, Episode 8, takes that in a wildly different direction, which is he's messed up for the rest of his life. In Legends, it's like he's messed up for a scene, all right? And in this scene, he's talking to Ben, and he's like, I'm pretty sad. There's no other Jedi, and my dad killed him. That's pretty rough. And, he's...
And then I killed him.
Yeah, I mean, he's using Ben's ghost as his therapist, and Ben's like, no, I don't want to do that, and I'm out of here. But instead, it's thinking about the fact that Luke then gets a new focus on training a new order of Jedi. And, in this book, especially, it's about saving the galaxy. But, Luke's not the only one who had a potential crutch in this book. It's honestly Grand Admiral Thrawn. There's another storytelling crutch here that is quite weird. And all the weirdness of Legends. And that's one of the things I love about Legends. What about y'all? Is how weird it can get. I mean, our site mascot is Corran Horn, for crying out loud. So, I mean, we like the weird stuff, don't we? With all those daddy issues and medallions.
Oh, man. Medallions.
Oh, for sure. Freddie, do you think the Salamari, we're talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn, he's got these space salamanders he hangs around his neck in order to block Jeruah Sabaoth from, taking over his mind and all that good stuff. Do you think that for him is a storytelling shortcut? Or how do you think it's handled compared to the Ben Kenobi Force Ghost thing?
Yeah, I never really thought about it, but it kind of is like it's a creative crutch for sure. I mean, it's like there's many ways they could have done it. Like, oh, you're just in a building that happens to suck away your power, but instead they created an animal that has some kind of story behind it of why it's force repellent. And I thought that was pretty cool because then it adds like a complex thing to it where you can read into this animal in like some kind of book. I don't know, like the warfare book, right? One of those types. It creates more lore and world building and stuff like that. And I thought it was pretty interesting because I the whole time I read it, I was trying to figure out like, what is the purpose of this thing, man? Like, why is it like this? And it's got me thinking about it some more. So I thought it was pretty creative.
Yeah, it is creative. I like that you say that it contributes to the world building. How about you, Jake? Are you yes or no on the space salamanders?
Well, I was really turned off by them at first because I kind of had that. I was like, in the sense of like, I was just kind of like oh, come on. Like, like I was trying to understand like that. Those first couple things reading it, like, what's he doing going here for this? And then I realized what was happening. But one, I kind of warmed up to it. I always keep in the back of my mind, I think George Lucas is the one who said it, is that the whole point of Star Wars and adding stories to Star Wars is to introduce new characters, introduce new places, and introduce new aliens, I guess. And so that's one of those things that I always kind of reminded myself as I was reading anything that any of the stories where I've kind of been like, I'm not totally down with that. I try to open myself. We're not just dealing with a planet. We're not just dealing with a solar system. We're dealing with a galaxy, and there's going to be a lot of stuff like that. So I warmed up to them. I personally, I think that like if this would have been, Timothy Zahn and George Lucas working together to make a movie, it would have been like an item.
Yeah, more of a MacGuffin.
And I think
yeah,
yeah, like that.
George
would
have said, "I don't like lizards."
Yeah. No, I don't like. Yeah, and it would have been something. I like the idea of the Emperor's storehouse kind of stuff, but I feel like it would have been something, and then that it would have maybe made it a little bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like to have the item and be protected, and then kind of ship some things. I don't know. I thought it was creative. I ended up warming up to it. I don't think it distracted from the story any. It took me a minute to kind of buy into it.
Zahn in the behind the scenes 20th anniversary edition. We're gonna have to have some kind of a game where we ring a bell every time we reference this thing. It's so shiny that my light is reflecting off of it, and I'm gonna turn it just right in the camera.
So cool.
That's how important this book is in Star Wars Legends. Timothy Zahn does come out and say he needed some kind of a storytelling mechanism to be able to prevent Jarua Sabayoth from using Force Persuasion, but dark side Force Persuasion, where he just takes over your brain powers. He uses this in order to prevent Sabayoth from having control over Thrawn. But I like that it introduces Wayland. It gets them... it introduces Mirkur, which is where the Ysalamari are, but then he connects the Ysalamari to... What are the beasts that are... The Vornskurs? Is that what they're called?
Vornskurs.
Yeah, Vornskurs.
That are hunting Luke and Mara later in the book. So they come back to Mirkur, and it's... The Vornskurs have actually adapted to be able to hunt the Ysalamari by repelling the Force. And it's like he's created this entire ecosystem on Mirkur, which is something really rare in Star Wars, to be able to establish a new planet where its whole thing is not either this, and this is a storytelling crutch we've seen in recent Star Wars storytelling. Snow planet. We make Star Wars movie. We make sand planet. We make snow planet. This is Star Wars.
We need ice.
Exactly.
We need sand. We need a jungle. Let's go.
But here he creates this entire culture, this entire ecosystem, showing how the creatures have adapted and evolved. So at first it seems like a storytelling crutch, but if you really dig into it, you're right, Freddie. It really is some excellent world building, and it's with lizards, right? It's with salamanders, which is which was a ton of fun, of course. Yeah. Which I really enjoyed.
I really.
And we've talked about
really
the storytelling shortcuts, and one of the things that we've talked about with this book, last episode, I gave it a 10 out of 10 out of Star Wars books. Jake and Freddie, did you both give it a 9.5?
No, that was just me, because I'm complicated, and I'm the guy that everybody rolls their eyes about. It's like, come on, Jake, really?
Do you remember your score, Freddie?
I'm pretty sure I gave it a 10.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Okay. So it's you and me giving it a 10. Jake giving it a 9.
Jake gave it like a 5, probably.
Because remember me, I said my 10s are the masterpieces. This is probably your all's masterpiece, but I don't like it. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I read it really fast. I liked a lot of things for it. But my masterpieces I'm not having those moments where I'm like, space salamanders. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So this book, while I consider it chef's kiss of a Star Wars book, it does have its goofiness, which I actually think enhances it. But I know I've liked this book for a long time, so I've got the twinge of nostalgia that I can never quite separate. So let's talk about some of the weirder things. Where does this book miss? All right, and I've seen some criticism. Like I said last week, it has become popular to dump on Heir to the Empire, almost called it Heir to the Jedi, which is an appropriate book to dump on. No, we won't. We're all about positivity here at UTN, Legends and Canon and all that. All right, Freddie, where do you think Heir to the Empire misses the mark as a Star Wars story? Is there anything at all?
This is a hard one, because I really like the book, and it could be of the nostalgia of it. But if I had to This is tough, man. You're gonna have to come back to me
All
on
right,
this.
we'll come back to you.
I gotta hear Jake.
Jake,
Oh,
you gave it a 9.
this is always-
You gave it a 9.5, so there's something for you, right?
This is always gonna be, and it was one of the better ones. More Millennium Falcon.
All right, somebody
More-
gift
and this
that.
book- but
Make a
they-
gift of
they
that. There we
just
go.
l-
Gift that sucker.
They just left the Millennium Falcon hanging out over Endor, and I'm like, we could have so many Falcon adventures.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's why I've always loved the movies on things. It's just I love the ships,
Well,
and the traveling.
There,
and stuff
there
like that,
is
and
this,
I-
Jake. There's another Millennium Falcon in this book. There's an exact replica.
Yes, there is. I was gonna say this one did pretty good compared to you had a little at the end there. You had some Falcon time going out in the battle. I think when I was a kid, I watched The Empire Strikes Back the most because it just was the movie that had the Millennium Falcon in it the most, and so that's what. As far as like more serious things, I don't think it really. There's really nothing I could put my pinpoint on to say it's lacking in that. I mean, I was happy with the Luke and the Leia and the Han stuff. I'm glad that Lando was in it. I'm glad that we still had shades of we still had the Empire, even though it was a whatever. What's the saying? The something of its former.
The
self.
remnant. A shadow
yeah.
of its former self.
We had new places. I loved Card and Mara, so we had a little bit of the underworld side of things. I think that's when I remember kind of reading through it the first time and talking to some of you guys as I was doing it. Like my personal review of it wasn't really. I was like, it's just good. And I think part of that goes back into I really don't feel like there was anything left out or too goofy other than the salamanders and the super buff old guy that really
Buff Obi-Wan.
became a distraction. Yeah.
Look at these abs,
Buff
everybody.
Dumbledore.
Look,
Wasn't
that's
that-
hard.
wasn't that what
Dumbledore's
we did?
abs. I mean, look at these suckers.
Take that,
You could grind. You could grind the zest of a lemon on those.
But I don't know. Anytime I just my answer is always going to be what's the faster, more intense, more Falcon, more Falcon, more Falcon.
There you
And
go.
we could use more
I mean,
Falcon.
that's a great criticism. It could be faster and more
it's really
intense.
good.
It gives you 2 Falcons, and yet your number one critique is you need more Falcon. That's
More Falcons.
That's great. You got something yet, Freddie? I will say in the
Yeah.
chat to give you more time. Cheryl has said for her the number one detractor, if anything, she loves the book, is that Jarua Sabayoth is super creepy. I will say in a 2020, like, hey, we're in the age of Me Too. We're a little bit better at understanding boundaries with creepy men toward women. Jarua Sabayoth, he's trying to experiment on Jedi, on a pregnant woman. That is not okay. It is really, really disturbing.
He really wants to get in the mind. We talk about the violation of just space and stepping into it. He really likes to get in to the most private of the areas.
I will say this much about Jarua Sabayoth. He could at least button up his robe. Am I right? All right. What you got, Freddie? Anything. Does
So-
anything miss the mark?
I'm going to come at it at a different angle. And I think the reason why a lot of people are bashing on it, there's 2 camps, right? And this is where I'm going to come from because I don't really feel like there's anything wrong with it in my point of view. But I feel like what a lot of here's what's happening in my opinion. I feel like people are reading it as a 91 story, right? It was written a long time ago in the 90s, and the stylized version of what it is, right? The way it reads is from the 90s. And I feel like a lot of people are forgetting that we're in the 2000s now, or the 2020. Style has changed since the 90s. Style has changed in movies. Style has changed in books, and I feel like people are reading it as if it's still supposed to be relevant. And that's one of the things that I've seen, at least. I would say the other thing is a lot of people are used to the current Thrawn, which is he's more he's just as strategic, but he's not as malicious.
He's an anti-hero, right?
Yes, exactly. And so people like that, and honestly, I like that too. I like both. I think they both lend some pretty scary things to the story. I would definitely fear old Legends Thrawn a little more than current Thrawn. I feel like if I was at least a useful person, he would leave me alone. But this other one, maybe not so much. But personally, I feel like people are reading it as if it's a 2000s book, right? It just doesn't read the same. The style is different. You're not going to see a buff Albus Dumbledore on a Harry Potter book, right?
But maybe I mean, the covers alone, I mean, they have not especially aged well. I love them for that. I actually think they've gotten better over time. A lot of people have said, like I said last week, Club Jade ranked these some of the worst Star Wars covers ever. In fact, Del Rey just re-released new covers this decade. But yeah, they don't age especially well in the writing style is different in terms of Star Wars books. In particular, for me, the one big thing is in that category, the things that didn't really age well is the incredibly frequent use of Star Wars tropes. I mean, Zahn is looking. Thrawn himself got a Thrawn poster right there. He's looking at me this entire time as I'm criticizing his book. I'm feeling a little scared with his red eyes. He's literally staring right at me since I moved my desk. Anyway, the number one thing that's disturbing in terms of this book just is really kind of getting under my skin is its incredibly frequent use of Star Wars tropes. There's a lot of reused dialogue from the original trilogy. You know what I'm talking about? You've got...
Didn't Zahn talk about doing that intentionally, though?
Yeah, he did, but Zahn, bless his heart, has a way of acknowledging his faults and explaining himself out of his storytelling problems rather than taking the criticism and saying, I should work on that. He just defends himself. He just doubles down. So the number one thing that bothers me here is that there's a lot of people, 2 or 3 times in this book alone. It's egregious. How many times people say, I've got a bad feeling about this? I mean, it's coming up a lot.
Hey, it's me.
Yeah, exactly. There's an entire point in this book where Han and Leia are having a conversation, and Leia, for real, explicitly quotes, she says this, I am not a committee. And that didn't need to happen. You can understand that it's Han and Leia, even if she doesn't say, I am not a committee.
So good.
See, for me, it kind of helped in some cases because I could, I don't know, when you think about Star Wars books, I can read those and I can hear the voices of the characters in my own head versus other books that I
well, he does a great job with that. He does.
Yeah, but those were nice little moments for me where I was able to hear that character's voice, and if I maybe was trailing off, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. I mean, there were some moments where I'm just okay, we're copied the script down. But I did there were some times whenever I thought to myself I can hear them saying that right there.
Yeah, for me it was just a little eye rolling, and I've read this book maybe 7 times. This was the first time that it bothered me. So maybe it's just that I've read the book too many times. We'll just say it's my fault, not Zahn's. But it was Zahn's fault. All right.
Well, I think about that. If I would going through read it again, it was now it will stick with me as I go in and read it. So
yeah, for sure. I will say once you've read 200 Legends books, this one stands out as especially egregious in terms of its reuse of original trilogy dialogue. All right, is that your complaint, Freddie? The hot chocolate?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it, and I even looked at the show notes. I was like, oh yeah.
Oh, Cheryl wants to
Forgot
say,
about
for
that.
the record, got to put it on the record that she likes the quote of, I am not a committee, and she also says that she likes the hot chocolate, and she also says that Greedo shot first. Okay, what did you want to say, Freddie?
Well, I don't know. I just feel like there's times where I read something and it kind of takes me out, and I just kind of do one of those, and then I just keep reading. And that was one of them, right? You just kind of, it takes you out for a second, and you just think about it, and you just move on. But definitely the hot chocolate. It just
So what Freddie's talking about here, if you haven't read the book, is early on, when we're first reintroduced to Luke in this book, he is established very clearly as good boy Luke. Capital G, capital B, good boy Luke. This is not Luke of The Last Jedi. This is Luke as a hero who has leveled up in a big way. Not only is he almost a Jedi Master at this point, he also is so good that he would never touch an alcoholic beverage. He drinks hot chocolate. And for me...
Isn't Lando the one who gave it to him? Because that was the biggest thing
This is an exotic beverage. You're going to love it.
Hot chocolate.
It comes from the beans
No way Lando Because if I remember, didn't they try to make it seem like it probably would be like, oh, Lando set me up with this exact whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, I can imagine. Only imagine what Lando's giving him there, and it's like hot chocolate, and you're like, what?
Yeah, it's not Corellian whiskey, which is Han's favorite drink. Leia's favorite is Alderanian wine, and because she's a mom, you gotta have that white wine. But for
2 ice cubes
for
please.
Luke,
only 2.
for Luke, it actually becomes an inside joke in Legends. Let's keep account, Freddie. Every book that mentions hot chocolate, let's start the show off with sipping some hot chocolate, especially now that we get into winter. It happens a lot. Happens a lot for sure, which is Luke is like, he's such a good boy. He doesn't drink alcohol. He drinks hot chocolate. He's got terrible teeth because of it, all the sugar. He got Austin Powers teeth, definitely. But this book ultimately is really successful. It's a New York Times #1 bestseller for a reason. And that is because it really does establish this universe, and it reestablishes the old universe, but it also sets off the new with an incredible foundation. We've talked about where it misses the mark, but let's talk about some of the things it's successful with. How in particular, Jake, do you think Heir to the Empire contributes to the world building of the EU? I don't know how many Legends books you've read, and that's fine, but how can you imagine that this book establishes the foundation for this new era of Star Wars storytelling?
Well, I think the biggest thing is kind of like what I was talking about before with just the whole idea, George Lucas, his mentality with each movie is that you were supposed to build and add new places and new different characters. And I like that they didn't revisit any planets in this one, in Heir to the Empire, that were from the original trilogy. And I think that was kind of important to do because of that world building, to kind of jumpstart people to remember and see and focus on the fact that, there's more out there than Hoth and Tatooine especially because it shows up all the time. So, I think Zahn was probably in a pretty nice spot here because he didn't have to create the whole world within the world, but I think he set the precedent of, this, we can tell a story and it can be a good story and we don't have to go back to Tatooine all the time. I mean, even Lando didn't return to Cloud City. We have the establishment of Coruscant, which I didn't realize that Zahn created Coruscant, and George Lucas used that and took that for the prequel trilogy. And I think it was really cool to see a lot of those types of things. And like I said, Zahn didn't really have the responsibility of creating this new world. I mean, we're talking about a galaxy here. The possibilities are endless. There's thousands, millions maybe of planets that they could go to.
Yeah.
But I think he really set that precedent that you can tell a story with these characters and never set foot in any of the places that you know and love, and it's still going to be a really good story.
I hadn't thought about that, Jake.
So
they don't go back to original trilogy locations, really.
Yeah, so, it wasn't really that he was kind of was doing a good job of creating this world outside the world. I think he was just saying and doing, being able to say, we can tell this story now without those. And that is what I think probably gave a lot of other writers confidence. And,
yeah, that's a good point. He does empower other authors for sure.
Yeah. To say, okay, well, to have a successful story, I don't need to have Tatooine here.
We don't need another desert planet. Yeah.
Jakku?
Why does everybody want to go back to the desert?
Geonosis?
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you think, Freddie?
So that's just kind of my take on it. I think you did a good job.
Okay, so I'm going to Doctor Who everyone real quick and take everyone back to the 90s, right, when this book first came out. And granted, you're in the Dark Ages. You're not. I would say it's the beginning of the Dark Ages. You're not, or maybe it's right in the middle. I would say it's right in the middle of the Dark Ages, and you don't really have anything new from Star Wars that's too out there, right? You don't have anything that's big. It's all I would almost say like it's underground. You've got Power of the Force series, which was pretty hot around. I want to say like 94, 95, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And you don't really have anything new. And what Zahn did was he, like Cheryl said, he brought back, or he didn't bring back, he created Coruscant. He created Coruscant. Imagine reading a book and you're just like, what the heck is this planet? Because you've only seen what you've seen, right? You've seen Hoth, you've seen a lot of other planets, but you've never seen Coruscant and you've never seen Kashyyyk, right? So you're just imagining like these giant trees in your head, and you know, people who read it now, you take it for granted that these planets that he just built, right? And we've seen them already, but going back and thinking about how much he built, right? He got Thrawn, and he got Mara Jade in there too. Oh my goodness! I mean, this guy, he did a lot for Star Wars. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you know, in some big ways, Mirkr comes back up in the New Jedi Order. It plays a significant role at a pivotal book in Star by Star. Mirkr is the main setting. You know, we find, of course, Mara being one of the major Legends characters. We've got a debate going on in the chat between Cheryl and Skooma Joe, which is a ton of fun to see. Welcome, Skooma Joe, to the chat. One of our Discord enthusiasts. I'll say Legends. The Grand Admiral of Legends is Skooma Joe. And he is busting out some factoids on us. Of course, these are actually in the show notes. And so you've stolen my thunder, Skooma Joe. Which is that technically, Timothy Zahn didn't invent Coruscant. He named Coruscant. And so George Lucas had the idea for a planet-wide city. And then Ralph McQuarrie did incredible concept art. We'll see if we can find it and post it in the Discord. Since that's Skooma Joe's, you know, his habitat. Like Salamari on Mirkr. You know, Skooma Joe lives on Discord. You know, we'll say this much, that this was something that was in the West End Games material that then Zahn incorporated, and he named, and that name stuck, and then was incorporated into the prequels, which it's a pretty big honor. George doesn't really acknowledge the I would say the EU. He doesn't acknowledge Legends very much, not very much at all. And so for him to throw a bone to Timothy Zahn is pretty cool, for being honest. And so, you know, it establishes so many things. The maneuver that Luke pulls in order to escape the Imperial tractor beam comes up again in Rebels, as does the several other Star Wars books, as well as the maneuver that happens.
Mark Sable.
Yeah, the Marg Sable from the very first chapter, that comes up again in Rebels. There you go, with some Legends Rebels crossover factoids, Jake.
And the Clone Wars, don't they? They tie in the Clone Wars.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's
Clone Wars.
Flower.
Yeah.
Well, it's Rebel. He does it in Rebels, but there is the tie-in with the Clone Wars,
wow.
because Ahsoka. I thought it was somewhere. It was implied that the character Vader knew what it was because of what he remembered as Anakin. So there's some connection there. That's a whole different story, though. But it was from the Legends.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I'm
You know, let us know, everybody in the chat, what your number one world-building aspect of Heir to the Empire is. I think for me, it might be the hot chocolate. No, just kidding. I think that it's the... I've blanked on his name. It's either like a toss-up between Gilad Pelion, or, you know, his character arc is absolutely just heartwarming and heartbreaking in Legends. It's just so perfect. Incredible Imperial, my favorite Imperial for sure in Legends. And it's a toss-up between everybody's favorite Imperial or everybody's most hated Rebel, which is Borsk Phalia, or as I like to call him, Warsk Phalia, because he's the worst for sure. That was a bad dad joke, but I am definitely rocking some suburban dad energy. You got anything? Who's your favorite of the two, Freddie? Is it Borsk or is it Gilad?
I every time I read Borsk, his character, I just dislike him so much. I would definitely say, I don't know, man. This is a tough one.
I would say, do you love to hate Borsk Phalia more than you love to love Gilad Pelion? That's the question.
So I like Pelion because he's competent yet incompetent, right? And he's definitely coming in at our point of view where he's asking all the right questions. You just accept you expect someone with his rank in the military to be a little more strategic and intelligent, but I mean, there's a reason why he's there, and I like without him the story wouldn't read anywhere close to what. I mean, Zahn would be even more of a mystery, and it just wouldn't make sense. So, I mean, I like that, but I love to hate Borsk, man. I love to hate him.
I do too. I especially love the way that he comes along in the Legends continuity, how he goes from like Thrawn's understudy to eventually, becoming the good Imperial, right? The Imperial who actually has his head on straight. He's not an egomaniac. He's not megalomaniacal. I'm not sure if that's even a word, but I just said it. I said the word. And thank you, Andrew, for that bit. Who wants to say that he also loves... I don't know if I want to say this. This sounds a little bit raunchy. All right, I'm going to say it. He says he loves some Pelion stash. Yum, yum. All right, I'm going to get closer to the mic. He says yum, yum. All right, I'm going to grow a stash. I'm going to grow a stash this winter just for Andrew. Do some Pelion cosplaying. We'll see. Yeah, Faley is a love-hate. If I was going to cosplay as Faley, I'd need to grow out some real body hair, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, man.
Thanks. He is one hairy character. And he's really utilized well by a lot of authors because he's easy to write. He's after his own agenda. He's pursuing his own politics. He's your example of somebody who is corrupt and yet competent in Legends on the good side, right? He's a rebel. He's in the New Republic. This is one of the big things that's, I think, being established very well. There's a lot of nuance in this book in how we see the development of the rebels going from being a rebellion, a guerrilla warfare movement, to becoming a government, right? If you're a Hamilton fan, fighting a war is easy, but governing's harder, right? This is a big transition that's happening, and we do want to say that in Heir to the Empire, this is one of the big transitions that's happening. So Jake, as somebody who's read a lot of the new canon, who's pretty well entrenched in the modern day Star Wars, we see the Republic go to the Rebellion, to the New Republic, to the Resistance. How about in Legends? How do you see this book establishing this new chapter where the Rebellion goes from being a movement to a government?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of the same. I feel like with new canon, what a huge piece of their what they've tried to achieve between the Aftermath trilogy and Bloodline was, I think they tried to take a slower approach to like answering some of the questions about things that were probably skimmed over.
Yeah.
With the establishment of this New Republic government in the Legends.
It's a little haphazard in Legends.
Yeah, which is understandable. I mean, you can't hold that against anybody. I mean, Zahn started this big movement with these expanded universe books, and everybody else essentially kind of had to backtrack. And there was more of a concerted.
That's good.
Concerted effort with the new canon, which I think was really effective. I wasn't like turned off. But I don't know why I keep saying what's turning me on and turning me off tonight. I wasn't really turned off by the way that the new government was. I think why I hated Falia the most, and this kind of plays into it, was that he, we got the little bit of an explanation of like where he was during the original trilogy and what he was doing. But my thing with him was always like, who is this guy? Like Leia was there from the beginning, and the things that she went through and what she was involved with. Mon Mothma popped up in Return of the Jedi, which that character kind of... But that was always my issue with him, is I was like, why is everybody listening to this guy and supporting this guy and okay with this guy questioning these people that are literally the reason why this government is here right now? I can understand that, and you try to get in the mentality of like, how would people be whenever you move into those situations that you want to avoid what you had before, and you got new voices and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't not have anything to say about it. I like the new canon establishment better, but I love the Aftermath trilogy. But that's just beside the point right now. I didn't dislike the new government or the government that was established in Heir to the Empire. I thought it was as effective as it could be. I truly, the way I guess I think of it, is it's just another version of the same story to me, and I just like the canon one better.
In particular, what it establishes well is that you have some people in the new government who are not part of the rebellion, who are using the victories and the accomplishments of the rebellion as political stepping stones to their own career. And that's what Phalia does. Many
Yeah.
Bothans died to bring us this information. So
Yeah.
he is like, hey, I'm a Bothan and I want to have power. So he moves into power for his people, not for the galaxy, and for his own, political career. So he's not afraid to throw like Admiral Akbar under the bus, and we as the reader were like, hey, we love Akbar, we love some fish face.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely, we love to quote that stuff. So how dare you get Akbar arrested at the end of the book?
Yeah.
And so one of the things it shows is there were heroes on both sides, and there's villains on both sides.
Yeah.
Freddie, do you want to chime in on this? How do we see the birth of the New Republic in this book?
You know what really turns me on? The Republic.
Oh no.
Democracy.
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 Anyway, yeah.
I love democracy.
So you begin to see the true form of what they're trying to go for, right? Out of all, I guess, rebellion, there has to be a struggle and there has to be a battle. And they basically arise from violence, and they're trying to be the opposite of, and this is, everybody knows this, they're trying to be the opposite of what they just destroyed, which is, and I'm not sure, I'm getting canon and legends mixed up, but they get rid of weapons as much as possible. I believe that, I'm not sure if that's canon or legends. I'm blanking.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
canon.
Yeah, it's canon.
Yeah.
Whereas, I don't think it's the same in legends, but you can see there's like a laying the arms down. We're going to be a little more peaceful. We're going to try to help everybody out. And you see it in this book, right? Leia helps out the Nogri into getting recognition within the Republic, and that.
I forgot about sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
go
you,
ahead.
but that just made me think about the senator that Han and Lando go. We haven't talked about him at all. Senator Bel Iblis.
He's not in this book.
Oh, okay, crap. I just ruined that.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But to play off what Freddie was saying, that was what it was making me think of was, the laying down of arms, but the coming together of the power and seeing those characters differently. So I didn't mean to hijack.
No, it's good.
I
and
I'm going to hijack your point with something that's not even in this book.
we'll revisit that point in another book.
Yeah, with Timothy. Timothy's going to be our guest, not you, Jake.
Yeah.
You're out of here.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a good thing this is part 2, because I wouldn't be asked to come back.
No.
Part
so
the last.
Just going back to it, right? You start to see the maturity of the rebellion, because they're no longer calling themselves the rebellion, and you can kind of see that shift in the book, right? They're like, well, they're the Republic now, the new Republic, and you see how mature everyone's becoming, and you're starting to see the political games, right? Because everyone was on the same team before, but now that there's a little more safety, they can go after each other, and you see that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. They do go after each other, which it's pretty cutthroat. I mean, it leaves me pretty conflicted throughout this book to feel like, oh man, why are we going after Akbar? He's not the right, and eventually we're going to find out what's actually happening, who the leak is, and it's not what I was expecting first read through. In fact, the first few read throughs, I was like, I don't know who the spy is, and I've read these books before. And so you feel that like not all is well, even though the rebels won the Battle of Endor. They have not yet successfully established their control over the galaxy. It really is a make it or break it moment for the New Republic. It's, of course, also, make it or break it for the EU. This is a massive turning point in Legends. Zahn has to establish his villains. And what's interesting is there's actually 2 pretty big villains in this book. And I'm not talking about Hot Chocolate and Borsk Phalia. I'm talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn himself and Jeruis Sabayoth, which is kind of a bold move to begin your new trilogy with 2 villains instead of just 1. And they're teaming up, but they don't really like each other. It's kind of layered, which is fun. But Thrawn really is one of the most memorable Legends villains. However, my biggest gripe with the book is I find the ending lackluster. I like the final battle, but it's anticlimactic because at the end, Thrawn says, "Oh well, it didn't actually matter at all, and we're still pursuing our ultimate plans." All right, like he doesn't. That was a terrible impression. I tried and I failed. And I'm just gonna layer in the exact quote from the audiobook, and nobody's ever gonna know. Just gonna edit that in. That's the perks of being your own editor. Thrawn really is one of the most memorable Legends villains. But let me ask you, Freddie, did Thrawn ever have a chance, honestly, of reestablishing the Empire?
No chance. He had no chance. And
none? 0% chance?
Yeah, you've got.
What are the odds, Freddie? Tell me the odds.
Never tell me the odds.
Original trilogy quote. Those. You could be Timothy Zahn.
He didn't have a chance, and the reason is you've got a deranged dark Jedi, right, on your team, who's not really on his team. It's almost like he just wants to get rid of this guy the second he can. But you've got Luke Skywalker, you've got basically the Jedi on one side, and you've got Thrawn on the other side, and there's no way the Force is going to let Thrawn thwart the light side. It needs to come back, right? They're just like, all right, this balance, we've had enough of Sidious, we've had enough of Vader, boom with the light side until you get some darkness here and there and naked palps everywhere.
Oh yeah, there we go. Wow, that is not something I'd ever considered.
Look what you have made.
Look what you have made, he says. What odds would you give Thrawn, Jake? Any better odds than Freddie? Freddie's kind of shooting low on this one.
The way I kind of saw it, what I always kind of imagined would be the most realistic way that it would have happened is that the kind of, as we start to nod back to the Clone Wars maybe, but almost like the galaxy would have been split into factions. And I think that should have probably been Thrawn's more realistic goal. I like that Freddie brought it up in terms of the Force, because I'd never really thought of it that way, that the Force was the manipulator here. The Force was the one that was controlling this, and the Force wouldn't have let that happen. Because I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it in a more literal way of just general people. And maybe I'm forgetting the fact that the Force has an impact over, because I think of it in terms of we talk about this in some of my classes. Humans are inherently evil creatures, and they're selfish and they're a survival of the fittest kind of scenario. And they, you kind of look at this whole scenario with the New Republic is that these people, these insurgents within this society, as the Empire painted them as being terrorists almost, they finally get to the point where they're the ones who are governing the galaxy, but they've got to find somebody to rebel against, and so they end up doing it towards each other. And so, I part of me thinks that, I think Thrawn would have had a chance, because I feel like in the galaxy there were plenty of people there who, the same way that you look at any totalitarian government, that are kind of brainwashed into loving it because they like the order and the focus, and they don't realize how bad they have it. But I don't think we saw enough of what else was going on in the galaxy to really get a feel for that. So I think it's hard to say. I think he would have had a chance, but it never would have been the same thing as it was, because especially with the establishment in this book, that the Emperor himself had so much impact on how the military operated and what they were able to do.
Yeah, it's a good point. I really go back and forth on this a lot. I'll save some of my critique here for our episode on The Last Command, which we'll get to in just a few weeks. And that is to say that it seems to me that Thrawn was only going down from the inside. He was not going to be taken down by the rebels. They were never going to be able to touch him. They were never going to figure out. They could never get a step ahead of him. In this book, he's always one step ahead. He eventually doesn't win the battle, but he's still got a plan that's in motion that they don't even have a handle on. They don't have any way to beat him. There's no battle strategist other than maybe Akbar, but Akbar's been arrested at the end of this book, which is an absolute masterstroke by Zahn. And so it's something that works really well in terms of saying, well, this guy's kind of going to be untouchable. You know, Thrawn is somebody who I always believed would have succeeded if he hadn't neglected his own blind spots. And we'll save, we'll save that for another day. We'll talk about what those blind spots are. You know, you have to read our other books in the series. Dark Force Rising, I think this is the first time I've ever even pulled these off the shelf since I bought them, and The Last Command. If I can just figure out where my freaking camera is. All right, somewhere around here. All right, here we go. Yeah, Dark Force Rising. Oh, okay, you're flexing your new covers.
No, new is not always better.
Okay, thank you.
I'm like, news.
All right, one last major question before we start to wind things down tonight. We'll say welcome to Rob Neese, who has joined us late, but fashionably so. So welcome, Rob. Glad to have you here with us on Legends Look Back. And so the big question that we've got, of course, tying the fact in that Thrawn has been recently recanonized, which was absolutely one of the most exciting moments for me ever as a Star Wars fan. Star Wars Celebration Europe, in what feels like eons ago. In Star Wars Celebration Europe, was that 2016, Freddie?
Yeah, because 2015 was in, I believe, in Anaheim again.
In Anaheim, yeah, in California. So you were paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an old school celebrations fiend. I went back when it was in LA. I think that was like.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never been. But now that it's been canceled for this year, hey, maybe I can make the next one, which is cool. But in 2016, there's no way I can make that one unless we go all Doctor Who like Freddie.
That was in Germany, I think.
Okay, cool. At that one, there was this massive moment for all Thrawn, Zahn, EU fans, which was that Thrawn was going to be making his return to canon in both Rebels and a new standalone novel from Timothy Zahn himself. And believe it or not, can you believe this? Star Wars fans on the internet began to speculate. Some of the opinions were good, some of them were terrible. Just like us. We're going to have some good ones, we're going to have some bad ones tonight too. And that's this. One of the major pieces of speculation leading into Season 3 of Rebels, which was going to reintroduce Grand Admiral Thrawn, was this crazed Darth Maul going to serve the same function in the story as the crazy clone Jeruis Sabaoth back in Heir to the Empire. Jake, do you think this would have worked in Rebels to have Maul serve the same role that Sabaoth played? Do you think Thrawn could have manipulated him to use him for his own agenda? Or do you think that it's just a fundamentally different character?
I mean, I do think fundamentally it's a different character, and for me, it's so hard because the way that things are is so established.
Go back to the summer of 2016, Jake.
Yeah.
If there's one thing to be said about our podcast is that we're fashionably late with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, it does not seem. I could see it happening. I could. With Thrawn needing that person, and I could see Thrawn kind of. I don't know. See, so much of that time period with Rebels, I think where it would have hurt is that so much of that time period with Rebels was focused on the fact that the Jedi were gone and that they were no more, and you had Tarkin that was kind of in there, and so it was almost like you got Ezra and Kanan that were running around as like, almost impersonators because they didn't want, the Inquisitors were still there hunting people down, but like, it's almost like the role was different. Like, it would have been interesting to see how Thrawn would have gone to Maul and said, okay, I've got to, I want you to be this person to be able to, because the Force was in, you understand what I'm saying?
Battle meditation isn't nearly enough of a thing in canon. All right, I'm gonna make red hats that say this. Make battle meditation canon again.
Yeah.
What do you?
I like it.
Would it work?
I don't like. I didn't.
The number one force power in all of Legends: battle meditation. Somebody, a Jedi or a Sith, sits in a room and they think really hard about war, and everybody fights harder.
I just
extremely OP.
Like, I think if they would have brought in Maul to do that, they would have been giving so much more credit to that side of the Force that would have pulled away from Vader and the Emperor, who were essentially at their peak at this time. And I don't think that would have fit Thrawn's characterization or Maul's characterization really for Thrawn to say, okay, I need this person to be able to do this for me, when you got Vader and the Emperor over there sitting there being like, well, what do you have us? Why do you need to go get Maul to do this when you have us?
You've got Vader and the Emperor in that same time period. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Whereas in Legends, Thrawn is the big bad. He's the Godfather. He's large and in charge.
He needs one. He doesn't have a Vader and an Emperor at his disposal, so he's got to go out and find where one would be.
Yeah, so he's recruiting his own Vader. That's cool. I like that a lot. His own bare-chested, ab-infested Vader. Rob Neese makes a great point in the chat, which is in Legends he has the Ysalamari, which makes Sabayoth a variable he can control. Whereas Maul, he's not going to be very controllable. He's learned his lesson, not to be manipulated by a big Imperial villains. That's an excellent point from Rob in the chat. What do you think, Freddie? Do you think it would have worked to have Maul, function as the Sabayoth role?
Nah, not even a little bit.
I mean, come on, they're both crazy. They're both Darksiders. What else do you need? You got Thrawn? You got Skywalkers?
Yeah, it seems like it would work, but I don't feel like Darth Maul is as crazy as Sabayoth is. I feel like Sabayoth is literally a guy you pick up on the street and you're just like, hey, and you're just like, oh, dude, stay away from me. But
Kenobi. I think he's a different kind of crazy. Maul is
Maul is
a
like
different
legit,
kind
like,
of crazy.
Psychotic crazy.
Colon, a Star Wars story. What's that, Freddie?
I think Maul is a psychotic crazy, whereas Sabayoth is just like some dude on the side of the street who's just lost his marbles kind of guy. That's how I see it.
Let me take your babies.
Yeah. Whereas, you can see Maul saying, I'm going to take your
impression.
kids. I'm going to train them. I don't know. I don't feel like it's the same. And Maul doesn't give me the vibe that I get from Druis. That's all.
Oh, man. I need a ringtone of Jake saying, let me take your babies. That was good.
This
This has been quite the episode. Wow. All right. As we're winding down, I've had a ton of fun. I don't know about y'all. This has been just an absolute blast. We're talking about one of the best Legends books there ever was or ever will be, because, hey, Legends is pretty much, for the most part, a closed canon, even though it's not canon. You know what I mean? It's closed. It's happened. It's over. Any book before 2014, including this classic from 1991. What we're talking about, of course, is Heir to the Empire. As we close out, guys, before we wind it all down, let me ask you, what was your favorite part of the book? Everybody in the chat, in the Discord, let us know what's your favorite scene, favorite character, whatever it is, faves in the chat. Freddie, lead us off.
I liked the beginning. It set the tone of everything. You realized that Luke was going to be on his own, having that second chapter, I believe, with that conversation with Obi-Wan, and he's like, look, this is the last time we're going to talk. And you're just like, oh, shoot. It really sets the mood, and I felt, if it wasn't for that moment, I don't know if I would have felt the same about the whole story, which was like, Luke, you gotta grow up, man. Grow up and move on and get stronger and just beat this thing, because you're it. That's it, man. This is all you, kind of thing. And that moment was my favorite. I read it a few times because I had to let it sink in to really understand what Luke must have been feeling at that moment. So
good. Almost sounded like the Emperor when I said that. Good. All right, it's been a long week. What you got, Jake?
Same.
No
thing.
way, same thing.
Probably the first 50 pages. There's not really an event. I'm trying to think of an event. I personally, when we started to get towards the climax and some of those things on Merker is where
Merker. Only a Southerner would say Merker.
West Virginia down on Merker. But those first 50 pages and stuff where, we're getting reintroduced to the characters, like Freddie said, we're setting a tone. It was just nice to get back with those characters, and it only kind of went uphill from there. But if I had to go back and relive, I liked that, getting the introduction to them the first time. I guess you got the ending, you got the little showdown on Marker.
Oh no,
those types of things, which are exciting moments. But I just, I felt like Star Wars when I started. I think I read through the first 50 pages nonstop. Like, I didn't stop after the first chapter because I was just like, this is good. And that's one
of my favorite nights in all of Utini was the night that you started Heir to the Empire. because you were just posting a stream of consciousness, which is happening in the Slack.
Yes.
You were just saying, like, turns out
Yeah.
this book is good. And I was like, yes, Jake, come to the dark side of Legends.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've got some great answers in the chat. Absolutely great answers. If I can even scroll back far enough to get to all these answers. All right, Cheryl, in all caps, says that Mara and Luke without the Force in the forest is and having to survive together. That's her favorite scene. It really is sheer perfection. I like that a lot. Oh, what do you mean? There's horn skirts. What else do you
There's
need?
foreign skirts. I will say, because I just like the lore, the conversation between Luke and Mara, where Mara finally tells Luke her backstory.
Yeah, that's good.
I was really excited to.
Well, because he doesn't reveal it until pretty late in the book. Definitely the third act.
Yeah.
And so, she elaborates on that to say you've got Luke having to learn to survive without the Force, alongside a woman, a very angry woman, who wants to kill him. So that's pretty fun. And, we all know, of course, where that story goes, which is a ton of fun. All right, we've also got some great answers here from Wes, who says, step off. Don't know what he's talking about. That can't be an answer, but sorry we upset you, Wes. All right, Andrew. All right, here we go. Andrew says, Luke and Mara on Merkur. So much sexual tension as they fight for their lives. So great answer there from Andrew, and thanks for that bit. Also want to say thank you to NFL Super Pro for the follow. Glad to have you here on Legends Look Back. Welcome. In just a little bit, we're going to have another stream happening right here on twitch.tv/Utini_US. There it is. All right. Who else? Rob says he loves he loves Jake's shelves. His favorite part of the book is Jake's shelves.
South. That's why Jake's single right now, too. Actually.
Awesome. Love that. That's why Jake is single. All right.
All my money goes to the shelves.
That's why Jake is single, a Star Wars story. And Skooma Joe says the best part is when Luke drinks hot chocolate, obviously. So Skooma Joe is here to stay. Glad to have you here. Excellent answer. We've also, I do want to say before we wind up, before we wind down, or wind up if you're going to stay for the Squadron stream, which I am. I'm going to stay up hours from now because it's tomorrow's my day off and I'm excited about Squadrons. To close this out, I will say my favorite part of the book is kind of a toss-up between when Luke escapes his prison shed, because it's a shed. I mean, they're rednecks on Merkur. They're real rednecks. The way that they bust out, the way that
it's basically the West Virginia of the galaxy.
West Virginia. you got critters in the woods.
I can say that.
And so the way that he escapes is by hot wiring his electronic hand, which is pretty cool. He uses the power cell from that, which was a really inventive way to repurpose Return of the Jedi. And Andrew says in the chat, #find Jake's Mara Jade. I love that.
Jake's
Let's find Jake
Mara
a
Jade
woman.
Jake.
Let's find Jake a woman who wants to kill him in the woods. There we go. And we've already got Jake's already been gifted. Excellent. I love it. And it's a toss-up for me either between the hot wiring the hand or when Luke does his inventive escape from the tractor beam in his X-Wing and then accidentally strands himself. That's really exciting, really inventive, absolutely great touch from Zahn. Next week, however, we're not talking about a Zahn book. We are talking about a swath of Legends characters. Joining us next week, Meg Dowell herself, the Lady of Legends, as I like to call her. I just made that up right here, right now. Does it stick? Does it not? Who knows? It's certainly going to be better than Spready Freddy. But I will say Meg is going to be joining us to talk about the Ladies of Legends, because you know what? We could not do this episode without some female assistance. Am I right? What do you want us to talk about next week? You got a Lady of Legends who you want to see on the episode. We can't talk about every single female character in Legends. So if you have a favorite, let us know in the Utini Legends Look Back Discord, and or tag me or Freddie on Twitter, and we'll make sure we get her in the show notes. Could not be more excited for that episode. Let us know, and we'll make sure that we cover your favorite female character. In the meantime, that does it for this week. Thanks for joining us on Legends Look Back. We are live every Thursday night on Utini, on twitch.tv/Utini_US. I'm going to get that right one of these days. We do, of course, want to say thank you to our patrons who have helped us get to this point. Thank you for supporting us along the way. Thank you to those of you who have been with us here live in the chat. This is so much more fun to do this with you by our side. If you are with us on Twitch. You have an Amazon Prime subscription. You have one. They just rebranded. It's got a new name. You have one free Prime Gaming subscription a month, and we would be honored if you threw those credits our way. If you've got feedback for us and want your question read on the show, you can email us at legendslookback@utini.com or join the Legends Look Back Discord channel. Or, of course, you can find us on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Jared Q. Mays. Freddie?
At Spready Freddy.
Oh, no, that's not it. That's not... No, it's going to die. It's never being mentioned again.
At Wake Up Freddy.
Wake Up Freddy. And Jake is...
At Jake Ruddle.
And, of course, if you're looking to buy some of these books and want to help support the show, you can look up a book on Utini, click the Amazon link in the profile, or, hey, you can click the eBay link or the Thrift Books link, because we're Legends fans, and we get those used books, you know what I mean? You can click the link in the profile, and we get a few cents to help keep the lights on. Another way, of course, to help us out and show your love of Utini is by grabbing some swag from Teespring. Need I remind you of our incredible Thrawn-inspired merch? Or, of course, our Legends Look Back merch. We've got the It Was So Artfully Done Thrawn-inspired tank or the Legends Look Back tee, modeled by our number one fan right there. I also want to say this is your last week to use the code Thrawn15 for a 15% discount. And you got to save those credits, you know what I mean? Thank you, Freddie and Jake, for podcasting with me. And, of course, if you've read any of these books, head over to utini.com, leave us a review, let us know what you think, and remember, everybody, it's been a rough year for us all, so please keep the Utini fan code and be a force for positivity in the fandom. And everybody, take it easy. Have a good night.
This is a Utini broadcast.